Ok. Ok, on va commencer. Merci à tous d'être ici. Donc aujourd'hui, on a la chance d'accueillir donc Simon Cross de Facebook qui va nous présenter les nouveautés du SDK version 3. Simon et Stéphane qui est devant aussi. Simon donc, vient de Londres, donc il fera son talk en anglais. Mais Stéphane est basé à Paris, donc il pourra répondre à vos questions en français après la présentation de Simon. Et vous pourrez discuter avec eux pendant le pot après. Merci aussi à Facebook qui sponsorise justement le pot à la fin de la session avec les pizzas et les boissons. Donc, merci à eux. Voilà, et ensuite donc on aura la présentation de YouTube API par Pépine qui est ici. Et donc voilà, on va tout de suite commencer sur la présentation Facebook parce qu'on a pris un peu de retard. Voilà.
Don't tell me we've got a problem with that as well. It's taken about half an hour to get. We've got the internet working. Yes. But then the emulator broke. So I fixed that, and the screen broke, but now we have it working. That's it. So a lot more could go wrong in the next hour, 40 minutes, right? Yeah, 40 minutes. Code and do live demos, which yeah. Okay, we'll just do that. So a large amount could go wrong, but you guys would much rather see live code than PowerPoint, right? Yes. Okay. So firstly, apologies for speaking in English. We'll have a Q&A later. My colleague Stéphane, will, who is based here in Paris, will take questions in French. And if you have any, if I say things and you don't understand them, just please raise your hand and we'll get someone to translate. Before I dive into the fact that Facebook has a brand new for Android developers, how many of you guys build Android apps for your job? Excellent. How many of you guys are already using some kind of Facebook integration in your Android apps? Oh, okay, good. How many of you are using the new SDK? How many of you have touched the new SDK, played with it? Okay, good. Good, this is the perfect audience. But before I dive into the SDK itself, an SDK shouldn't really do anything, right? An SDK just makes life easier. I wanted to step back a little bit and spend some time talking about why you should bother integrating with Facebook at all, or how you should think about integrating with Facebook in your Android app. Okay, if you're an iOS developer, you have a problem. There's 600,000 apps in the App Store. 600,000, right? How are you going to get noticed? That's a really difficult problem. Android developers have it even worse. You guys, there's 700,000 apps in Google Play. So, and I spend most of my time working with developers at companies all over Europe. SoundCloud, Deezer, Spotify, Whipolo, Cinemure, TF1, France Télévisions, all of these guys. And every single time we speak to people, the main thing they say is the biggest challenge is getting noticed, getting downloads, and having users come back more often. Would you guys say that's the biggest problem as a professional Android developer? Yeah, there's a lot of people nodding heads. So why can Facebook help here? I want to show you one video that explains how. Have you guys ever heard of Song Pop? Anyone play Song Pop? Yeah, a few of you. So on the left here is a video of what happens inside Facebook when one of my friends taps on a story published by Song Pop's Android app. Okay, so going to scroll down. Now you can just about see it. Simon Cross guessed a song on Song Pop, "Kiss from a Rose" by Seal. Great record. They end up at Google Play, and they install Song Pop. Right, and the longest bit of this demo is the download from Google Play. So that user got Songpop installed on their Android device, not because a friend told them about it by word of mouth, or then told them to go and type Songpop into Google Play, or because it was featured, right? They just saw a story from one of their friends in Facebook's Android app, and now they're playing Songpop. If the user already had Songpop installed, it's even better, right? The user taps on Kiss from a Rose, and then it opens the Android app and links into the game that he was playing at the time. So that's quite a cool flow, right? That's pretty sweet. Facebook has 600 million monthly mobile users. 600 million people inside Facebook's native Android app, Facebook's native iOS app, and on m.facebook.com. In fact, we have 126 million monthly mobile users who are only mobile users. These guys don't ever go to facebook.com. 126 million. So if you see that flow, right, how cool is that? That recommendation came from a friend, right? From a person that you trust. You tapped on it, and now you're playing the same game or using the same app they were using. So that is like the main thing Facebook can help with. We have a massive user base, and by tying your app with tying your Facebook into your Android app, you can get distribution from Facebook. That's what you should think of Facebook as. It is a growth machine for native apps. So we care so much about this world of iOS and Android, but Android specifically, that we've spent a huge amount of time building out a brand new SDK, and that's what we're going to dig into today. Not only have we launched a new SDK, anyone been to this, developers.facebook.com/Android? We completely rewrote all of our documentation specifically for Android developers. Because you guys don't care about like JavaScript and CSS. If you want that, then you can go over here and get it. But now we have a single place that Java Android developers can come to get all of the information they need to build Facebook into their apps. If there is something that you don't know, that you need to know that isn't on here, tell me and I will fix it. And this is the new developer center. So, getting started guides, a bunch of reference documentation, and best of all, tutorials, sample apps and tutorials. So this is actually the thing I just said, which is we have 1 billion people using Facebook every month, 600 million of them on mobile, 126 million monthly mobile users, and they're twice as engaged, so they do twice as much stuff. But here's the thing. Facebook is not like Google Play or the App Store. You can't just submit your app to Facebook and go, awesome, we're going to get traffic. That may happen thanks to App Center, Bookmarks, and Search, which I'll come to later. But the real power of Facebook only comes if users share stuff, right? It's not like Google, where you just get indexed. To appear in Newsfeed, the people using your app have to log in with Facebook and they have to publish stuff back to Facebook. And in return, Facebook drives you traffic. Here's another example. I just showed you Songpop, but I'm going to show you another one. Endomondo. Anyone use Endomondo? Okay, awesome, isn't it? No? I love it. Also Runtastic. Well, I used to use Runtastic until I discovered Endomondo. How do I discover Endomondo? Let me explain. The contrast on the screen's a bit off, but what this is a cycle ride I went on. It was 70 kilometers, which was a long way. You wouldn't believe it to look at me. But this is a real story, right? Like, this took 3.5 hours. It was 70 miles, and my average speed was 19 kilometers per hour. It was very, very hilly. That is a story. So Endomondo is social by design, right? They have this view, which is what my friends are doing in Endomondo. This is table stakes today. If you guys aren't doing this, you need to be. Because this makes you go out and run more. It makes Endomondo better because I can see what my friends are doing. But that's table stakes. That's just, you should be doing that already. That's not enough. What Endomondo have done is add this feature where it shares my workouts to Facebook. And here's the cool thing. They're not sharing images, right? When I went on that big cycle ride, this is what happened in facebook.com. This is not an image. This is a map. Right? If I tap on this, I can move it around. I can zoom in, zoom out. And that's because Endomondo literally published the geodata to Facebook. They're not publishing an image, a title, a description. They're not doing just share, an old share dialogue. That's not enough anymore. They're using something called Open Graph to publish structured data. The cool thing about this is it appears on facebook.com, m.facebook.com, Facebook's iOS app, and Facebook's Android app. If a user, one of my friends, taps on that story, guess what? On the web, they end up at endomondo.com. And if they have Endomondo installed on their Android device, they end up inside Endomondo's Android app, and they are deep linked to the content that they clicked on. So I'll show you in a minute how to build this. And guess what? If the user doesn't have Endomondo installed, where do you think they go? It's the store. Download, install, and that user, that install was driven thanks to Facebook, but thanks to the friend who shared the story. So you see how important it is to get this loop going. Now that this user's got Endomondo installed, they're going to use it the next time they go for a run, which means it's going to publish their run to their friends, and the cycle continues. As I said, Facebook is not just an app store. It's not an app store like Google Play, but we do have a similar thing. We have an app directory called App Center, and Endomondo is listed in there because they've integrated with Facebook. Guess what? Tap on there, end up at Google Play. You begin to get the picture. So here's why it matters. This is out of date. In the last 30 days, we actually sent users into Google Play and the Apple App Store 200 million times. So we have all of these Android users and iOS users and mobile web users. If you're not integrating with Facebook, your competitors probably are, which means stories from their app are being seen in Android, in Facebook's Android app. Their users are tapping on them, and they're downloading and installing their apps and using them that way. Facebook is a growth machine. That's what it's for. And that's how you should think about integrating with Facebook and why you should integrate with Facebook. Okay, good. So that is like the big idea why this matters, right? So enough. Let's get into the geekery. So the old SDK was okay, but we built it a while ago and it needed updating. The Android ecosystem has come on leaps and bounds in the last 2 years. So there are three main things that the new SDK does that the old one didn't do. Number one, it manages sessions for you. Access tokens, permissions, expiry of access tokens, all of that stuff that you just don't want to worry about, the SDK manages it for you. Second thing it does is there's a bunch of UI components that we include in the SDK. This is why it's a project and not a jar file. So the UI components are a login button, a profile picture view, and the login button just extends the standard button view. And then we have a couple of fragments for picking places and picking users. And we'll go through those in a sec, but what they do is take away all of the complexity about asynchronously downloading user photos and place photos. It caches them for you, does all of the stuff, you just don't have to worry about it. And the last thing, and probably the coolest thing it does, is in our old SDK, you called our API, and guess what we gave you back? JSON. Now, if you're a JavaScript developer, that's awesome. If you're an Android developer, not so cool. So what the new SDK does is it has a bunch of built-in classes, and our SDK takes the JSON, instantiates a collection of these classes, all these classes, and sends them back to you. So you now get a user object. You now get a place object that's a proper Java object with proper getters and setters. High five. So they're the main things that the new SDK does. There's native UI, there's stuff for accessing the the API, and then there's a bunch of stuff that manages sessions and requests and response for you. Okay, so we're going to go into a few of these things now and demo them, and hopefully everything works. As I said, it all starts with this. If you haven't got Facebook login integrated into your app, then a user is not in a state that they can publish to Facebook, which means they're not a very valuable user. When you first fire up Songpop, and this isn't the right thing to do for everybody, right? Endomondo doesn't do this, but Songpop you cannot play without your friends. So the very first thing that happens when you fire up Songpop is they ask you to log in with Facebook. If you fire up SoundCloud on your Android device, there's a great big login with Facebook button. Why? Because those users are in a state that they can publish back to Facebook, which drives traffic back to SoundCloud. So this is a very important thing. Integrating with login is not just about logging in a user, though. There's 4 bits to it. You don't need a unique ID. A phone is a phone. It's in my pocket. It's my device. The unique ID is the device. So what else does Facebook login give you? So it gives you authentication, obviously. The next thing it gives you is identity. It gives you the actual person's name and their profile picture and their gender and their locale. Then they get the social graph, which is your friends. But then the thing that people forget is that we have the world's largest interest graph. We've had like buttons around the web for years. They're served billions of times a day. All of those things that people have liked, those movies, you can download them. And this is why it matters. This is Quora, right? And this is me firing up Quora for the very first time. I have never touched Quora as a product on any platform ever before. Here's what happens. Tap on it. Sign up with Facebook. It's going to send me over to the Facebook app to do the login. By the way, if the user doesn't have the Facebook APK on their device, then it just uses a web view instead. So now we're going to go back to Quora, and here's the killer thing. Quora now knows my name, knows who my friends are, and it knows my interests. So the very next thing I see on Quora is questions and answers that have been asked or answered by my friends, or about things I'm interested in. Imagine what that flow would have been like without Facebook. Number 1, create username and password, maybe enter an email address. I'm already bored. Add your friends. Well, how am I going to do that? Well, phone book. Could be done through the phone book. Okay, fair. Then, now what? Now, how do you know that I'm interested in sailing or snowboarding or drumming? You don't. But Quora did because they integrated with Facebook. So they're the 4 things that you get integrating with login. So here's how to actually get started building that stuff. Firstly, to add the SDK into your app is basically trivial. You add your app ID into the strings file, and then, bit of a hacky thing to do, but we have to do this for security. In your manifest, you have to tell us, you have to tell the app about this thing called Facebook login activity, and that's just something that we need so that if the authentication flow is interrupted for some reason, then we fix a bunch of security issues there. As I said, there are 2 bits in the new SDK that are useful for login, and this is the one we're going to look at. There's the login button, which extends the button class, but there's also this thing called login fragment, which extends fragment. And this allows you to have a single view in your app that you could maybe access from the action bar that allows the user to change their login or logged out state from Facebook. So let's actually look at that working. And this is where I say a lot of things could start to go wrong. But hopefully that's a good thing. Cool. So we're going to use an app called, can you see this stuff all right? Is that okay? Just? Okay. So we're going to use, with the SDK come 8 sample apps. So I'm just going to go through a couple of the sample apps because it's the easiest thing to do. We're going to use something called Hello Facebook Sample. So the very first thing we do is in our main XML, here it is, boom, login button. And it's as simple as that, right? Like, it's just a button. And it has all of the standard things that a button has. And then over in our activity file, all we need to do is get it, and then it provides this handy method on set user info change callback. Bit of a mouthful, but you get the idea. What that means is when someone logs in, call this function. So it's going to get a bunch of stuff from the Graph API, and look, Graph user, not random like stuff anymore, actual object. And then we can set that in the app, and then we're going to just do this stupid function called update UI. We're just going to do a bunch of stuff. We're going to set a bunch of buttons to be enabled, and look, user.getID. No JSON parsing or anything. It's great. User get first name. Oh. Strongly typed objects for the win. So that's pretty much it. I'm just going to run that. Tab login. It's going to send us over to the Facebook. This is where a lot of things could start going wrong, but bear with me. Not least the fact that the emulator is not the fastest piece of software in the world. And neither is the current Facebook app. But the new one is blazing quick. So I'm going to tap login. And boom. So there's something else that I'm not going to go into here in much detail. But look, there's a profile picture view. Now, getting profile pictures seems fairly trivial, right? It's a pretty obvious thing that you want to do when you're building a social app. But it's actually pretty tough if you did it yourself. I can see some people nodding, going, yeah, we hate this. Number one, you have to get the access token. Number two, you have to call the API /me /picture. That then returns a URL. Then you have to go and download that URL to get the drawable bitmap. Then you have to cache it and persist it and all this other crap. Then it's available in a bunch of different sizes. Which sizes do I want? I don't know. Can I have variable sizing? It's just a bit of a mess. So we created this handy thing called Profile Picture View. And adding it to your app is basically as simple as that. And then, I won't show it, but you can download the sample apps and have a look. In your activity, you go and get that, and then you give it a user ID. And that's it. It asynchronously downloads the images, it caches them, it does all the URL resolution, does it all for you. Cool thing is, that works for any Facebook object. So it works for places, pages, users, groups, everything. Anything that has a picture, it works for. Okay. Another couple of things that are built into the SDK that are pretty awesome are a bunch of convenience methods. New me request does what it says on the tin. And this is killer. As a mobile developer, the biggest problem you have, apart from distribution and fragmentation and all these other things, maybe the third biggest problem you have is the network. Right? Number one, it may not be there. Number two, latency is high. Number three, massively affects battery life. So one of the things you really want to do is minimize your network access. So the SDK has a new thing called request batch. You can batch a bunch of requests, fire them off to Facebook in a single over-the-air call. It does all of the data munging on Facebook side, and because we know all the requests, it's very efficient. And then we send you all that data back in one package. Pretty cool. So that's login, right? So you've got a user logged in, good times. We've already talked about profile picture view, but I just wanted to quickly look at these two things, place picker fragment and friend picker fragment. These are important because when you're publishing to Facebook, you want to add context around a story. When I rode that bike ride with Endomondo, if I ran it with other people, I want to tag other people in that story. And you can do that via the API. But you need a UI to pick them. That, if I was drinking, using an app called Social Cafe in a cafe, I might want to tag the place. And so we have friend picker and place picker fragments. So this is super easy to use. Just going to jump into these as well. And again, this is all in basically the same app, the Hello Facebook sample activity. Down here on line 289, we have this basic helper method that when a user clicks a button in the sample app, it's going to open one or other of those fragments. Down here on line 364, this is what we do when a user actually clicks on the button. We're going to fire up, we're going to create a new instance of the fragment, and we're going to load it up. And then the last thing we need to do is handle the user clicking on that. So 348 on place picker done. And guess what? Again, you see that? Graph place. So the actual thing you get back is a strongly typed object that represents the places that the user selected. While we're here, I'll show you how friend picker works as well. It's basically very similar. Again, on friend picker done, and you can see that this time we're going to send a collection of graph users back, so the user can select multiple people. But it's, again, graph user, and we can get the name of these users using standard getters and setters. So let's see this stuff in action. I'm going to pick some friends. Very exciting. Now, this is the first time that this is loading, so it takes a while because it's got to load my friends, and you can see it asynchronously loading the people in now. But the second time I fire this up, it should be quicker. There you go. It's hard to work out what's the emulator and what's the network, but we'll go with that. So I can just select a bunch of people here, done, and that was it. So the user didn't use your app. That fragment is contained in the SDK, and it calls into the native Facebook app to work. But super easy UI elements. Picking places, you can supply a latitude, longitude, or you can let it access the location services on the device. But again, we can pick Starbucks. The SDK, the reason we have it's Seattle is because the team that builds the SDK is actually based in Seattle. They love coffee. So there you go. You pick Starbucks. So pretty simple UI elements built into the SDK itself. Okay. So we're coming to the last bits of what I want to show you about the SDK now. All right so far? Am I speaking too quickly? Because I do that. All good? Perfect. Good. Publishing to Facebook. This is really, really important. There are 3 ways, basically, to publish content to Facebook, or to allow your users to publish content to Facebook. And there are these 3 things. First, the request dialog. The request dialog is for use when you want to either invite a friend to use the app, or you want to invite a friend to do something specific within the app. So Songpop uses this because when I play Songpop, I need to play against another user, so I have to choose one of my friends to play against. SoundCloud uses this because once I've uploaded a sound, I want to invite some of my friends to listen to it. So the request dialog is for that use case, and I'll demo this in a minute. Second one, feed dialog. How many of you guys build share? Okay, is that all you build in? Yeah? Okay, good, but it's not enough anymore. If you guys are building apps for clients and they don't understand this, it's your job, well, it's our job to convince you and your job to convince them that they need to do more than just share. So why would you implement the feed dialog as opposed to the standard share intent? And that's because Facebook owns the UI. Number one, they don't leave your app. Number two, Facebook owns the UI, which means Facebook understands what the user went through, which means you know what distribution to give it. So this is about publishing unstructured data. When you use the feed dialog, you're publishing an image, a title, a caption, and a description. It's unstructured data. But this is really good for like sharing a specific news story, or sharing a sound I sound on SoundCloud, or intentionally sharing my run in Endomondo. This is good for user-initiated shares. The last one, which is what Endomondo are using to publish those routes, is Open Graph. This is what Spotify uses when it's publishing your listens to Facebook. This is what Netflix uses when it's publishing the movies you watch to Facebook. Open Graph is about publishing your activity in an app. All of your intentional actions in an app are published with Open Graph. There's no interstitial necessary for the user. As long as they understand that they're sharing something, Open Graph is a great solution. So, in general, we recommend people use all of these three. In general, you start with this, then you do this, and then you probably do this. So let's demo these things actually working and show you why request dialog is such a powerful thing. Again, we have an app called, where is it? Send requests how to. So I'm just going to fire that up in the emulator. Now we're going to come upon something a bit scary. I'm going to suggest you use a deprecated method. So in the current beta version of the SDK should come out beta pretty soon, we've marked facebook.dialog as a deprecated method. And that's because we intend to replace the native thing in the future. But for now, this is still the thing to use. And this is from basically from the old SDK. It's just called dialog. App requests is the method. And then you send it all the data that it needs to run. I won't go into the details, but you can see exactly what it does. And this is why it's powerful. I'm going to hit send request. It's going to pop up the request dialog. Stefan, you got a phone ready? Yeah, man. I'm going to send you a request. There's a lot that could go wrong now. It's already going wrong. Okay, good. So here's a list of my friends. Simon sent you a request in send requests how to. Brilliant. You can customize some of that text. I'm actually going to click on Stefan. And then I'm going to send him the request. Off silent. Yeah?
I didn't beep, but I got a notification.
You want to see that? That bloody worked.
And if I open it, wait for it.
So the thing that happened there is he got a push notification from the Facebook native app, right? User using Android app, send a request to someone, and he got a push notification on his iOS device. So it doesn't matter if the sender is on iOS and the recipient is on Android, or the sender is on Android and the recipient is on iOS. It works both ways.
You want me to tap on your notification?
You can if you want, but no one can see it because it's your phone over there. Anyway, with that, what happens next is what we saw at the start with. Actually, no, I haven't shown you that yet. I haven't shown you that video. Oh well. Request notification, push notification, distribution for your app. He's going to tap on it, and guess where he's going to end up? Google Play or the App Store. Next, I want to show you the feed dialog, which is even simpler than this. Again, it's a terrible, terrible deprecated method. You can see this code is terrible, but it succinctly shows you how it works. So here's the title, caption, description, the link This is important in a minute. And the picture, the URL of the picture that we're going to send. That's going to take a while to fire up. So in the meantime, over on my timeline, here's something I published earlier. 15 minutes ago via feed.log, how to awesome Facebook SDK for Android. Hopefully the emulator started up now. Okay, here we go. Publish. Again, this is going to take a while. I'm leading up to the big finish. It is a bit old, yeah. Yeah, we're working on that. So the fact that these like old dialog methods are still in the SDK, like we're working on this stuff. But this isn't going to be deprecated for some time yet, but we need to change that to inherit from the Hollow theme, if available. So we're going to hit share. So it's posted that story to Facebook. And instead of showing you this over in the web, I'll show this in Facebook's native app. If I refresh my timeline, there you go. There's the story I shared. And if I click on that, guess where I'm going to end up? I'm going to end up at the URL that was shared. This is good for the desktop web. High five. Time for tacos. But in Android, this is less than cool. So here is my newsfeed in native Android. There's the story published, and that's now being seen by all my friends, including Stefan and people around the world. But guess what's going to happen if I click on it?